Welcome to the IonaHoops.com podcast with your host, Guy Flottico.
Season 3, episode 29 of the IonaHoops.com podcast is upon you. We've got a lot to cover in this episode, but before we get that going, I want to thank everyone who tuned in to the last episode with Coach Tobin Anderson, as it was the most listened to episode in IonaHoops.com podcast history, and that's going back more than 3 years now. Hey, let's keep that momentum going this time out. We've got a couple of great guests who are going to educate us on some of the new Gaels. Get used to this, given that we have, well, an entire roster of new Gaels coming up, pretty much. In between the Scouting Report episodes, we're going to have some other cool guests along the way, too. It's going to be a great spring and summer here, so be sure to take us with you as you head out to enjoy the warmer weather in the coming months. For now, though, I hope you enjoy these Iona Iotas.
Iotas.
Told y'all that the portal will start to giveth, as Iona picked up Adnan Tritu, a 6'3" grad student guard from Harvard. Tritu averaged 9.7 points, 3.3 boards, 2.1 assists while shooting 37% from three. Down the stretch of the season, he actually averaged closer to 12 points per game. And overall, Bart Torvik's portal rankings, he placed among the top 150 players available. Tritu picked Iona over Iowa State, Loyola Chicago, St. Joe's, Hofstra, Rice, and a host of others. And he's a Brooklyn native. Maybe we'll see him at Broccolino's. Welcome to Iona, Eden.
Iotas.
Have you heard of Virginia Premier AAU? Well, you will now, because 2 players from that program just committed to Tobin Anderson and the Gaels. We start with 6'8" forward Dylan Saunders. He's a recent FDU decommit, but make no mistake, he would have been a steal for FDU, and he's a steal for us. He's got a versatile game as a stretch 4-5 with a deep range, good hands, and can play inside out. When he committed to FDU, Anderson said he was the best shooter he saw all last summer. Sounds like a great weapon for the Gaels. Saunders' running mate at Virginia Premier isn't too shabby either. 6'5" guard Alex Bates had previously committed to Fordham over fellow A-10 program Duquesne, but recently decommitted from the Bronx School and opted to join Saunders in New Rochelle. Bates actually went viral for an explosive dunk that showcases athleticism, but he's not a one-trick pony. He's got a great rep as a shooter and a scorer, and consistent with other Tobin recruits, he's also a high IQ player. Welcome to Iona, Dylan and Alex.
Iotas.
Oz Shema is still an Iona Gael, and his legend continues to grow in my mind. That's it. That's the Iota. And with that, let's hit the transfer tracker, your portal. So I won't read the same list as last episode, though know that a couple of the guys from that list from last episode are now off the board to other schools. But there's a whole slew of guys Iona's been in contact with since, and a couple have even visited. A lot more are going to be visiting as well in the coming weeks. Here's the rundown of guys we've expressed interest in the portal since the last episode dropped. Only not the full list, just since the last episode dropped. Again, this is what's been reported or a little bit beyond that. 7-foot grad student center Russell Chua from South Florida, 11 points, 8.6 boards, 61% field goal percentage. 6'3" senior guard Zion Stiles from University of Maryland Eastern Shore, 11.6 points, 3.5 boards, 41% from three-point range. 6'10" freshman center Mamadou Cisse from St. Louis, 43% field goals, 0.5 points, 0.5 boards in just 3.6 minutes per game. 6'4" sophomore Greg Gordon, the 16th ranked JUCO in the country, second team JUCO All-American from Dyersburg State, 23 points, 11 boards, 55% field goal percentage. 6'7" senior guard Wiesa Panzo from Stetson, 8.6 points, 4.6 boards, 47% from three-point range. 6-foot point guard Quante Berry from Providence, former 4-star who redshirted this past year. 6-foot junior guard Trey Thomas from Vanderbilt, 5.6 points, 30% three-point field goal shooting. 6'4" junior guard Matt Becht from Southern New Hampshire University Division II, 15 points, 3.5 rebounds, 45% three-point field goal shooting, 90% free throw shooting. 6'7" sophomore guard forward Chaney Johnson from Alabama Huntsville Division II, 16 points, 7 rebounds, 52% field goal. 6'3" sophomore guard Colby Rogers from Nova Southeastern Division II, national champs, 13 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 2.5 steals, 45% field goal shooting. 6'3" senior point guard Joel Brown from Cal, 7 points, 3 assists, 3 boards, 41% shooting. 6.5 junior guard Javis Harvey from Tennessee Tech, 12 points, 3.6 boards, 2.3 assists, 44% from three-point range, 75% from the line. And 6'6" sophomore forward Tanner Thomas from Sacred Heart, 7 points, 5 rebounds, 50% field goal, 81% from the line. With 4 freshmen already picked up by Anderson joining grad student Tree 2 and the legend, that is now Oz Shema, I would expect the staff to go heavy on transfers for almost all of the 7 remaining roster spots. Given that, it's no surprise we have no offer roundup here since we've locked in enough high school guys. I did know one JUCO player earlier, and I lumped him in with the portal guys. We're going to continue to take that approach when there is no offer roundup. But anyway, I don't mind this approach taken by the staff. Players are still joining the portal literally every day, and that will continue. And it's also possible guys on our roster haven't even entered the portal that will be on our roster, haven't even entered the portal yet. And I talked about last episode, and Coach Anderson echoed, good high school talent is in abundance because of everyone's portal obsession. So we grabbed 4 good ones and got that out of the way. And now we'll see how many portal guys who thought they were going to go high major are still sitting there in the coming weeks and might just end up landing in New Rochelle instead. It's a fun ride, folks. Don't rush it. Speaking of getting off to good starts regarding recruiting, let's bring in a couple experts to talk about our freshman commits. Isaiah Quigley, Dylan Saunders, and Alex Bates. For Quigley, we'll welcome Colby Giacubeno, a scout from Prephoops and a recruiting insider for sites like 247 Sports. For Saunders and Bates, we're going to welcome in Corey Stitzel from Virginia Premier AAU, where he coached both players. So let's get to it. All right, Iona fans, it's my pleasure to welcome Colby Giacubeno, a scout for Prephoops and a recruiting insider for sites like 247 Sports. Colby, welcome to the program. I know you have seen Jeremiah Quigley a lot, so I'd love to know what you think of first when you think of him as a player.
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, Guy, appreciate you having me on. Definitely love, what you do for the fan base there at Iona, and it's a rabid one, and it's only going to get, I think it's only going to grow and become more exciting with Tobin at the helm now. So just wanted to start off with that. But yeah, man, I mean, I think a guy like Jeremiah, he fits a lot of what Tobin Anderson likes in his point guards, where it's, as we saw this year, of course, in the run in the NCAA tournament, he's not really pressed on bigger guards, meaning that he can take the smaller guards who have a little bit of a dog mentality to them and thrive at a high level. And Jeremiah definitely fits that mold. He comes from playing in one of the best conferences in the country in the WCAC. Mm-hmm. And then, he also plays for one of the most, I would say historic and prized grassroots teams in team takeover. So on both ends, a lot of winning, a lot of experience, and a lot of battles at being the point guard.
Can you tell us what you know about his recruiting process? I mean, he got some interest. I'm wondering if his size scared some bigger schools away, but how he ended up committing to Tobin Anderson and FDU, and now again, basically recommitting to Tobin at Iona.
Yeah. I mean, we see this a lot in this WCAC conference, especially these guys who are 6 foot guards, sub 6 foot guards who get it done at a high level and a lot of Division Ones are kind of, flirting with him, keeping their eye on him, but they're just kind of hesitant to pull the trigger. And I think that's what he had a handful of schools on him. Obviously Tobin was recruiting him there at Fairleigh Dickinson. UMBC was after him. NJIT was after him. Radford was after him. But then, ultimately he commits to Tobin at Fairleigh Dickinson. Tobin heads to Iona, and then, the rest is history. So I think it's Tobin. The way that he separates himself, I mean, even in gyms down here, he is no stranger. I remember it was towards the end of last season, the high school season. I was at a game at John Carroll versus Good Counsel, and this was, still when Tobin was at his Division II job, and when he walked in, there was about 2 or 3 other coaches there, at various levels, not D1 coaches, but various levels. And right away they were just like, "Oh man, I didn't want to see him walk in." They knew, because they just knew when Tobin walks into a gym, he's gonna, he's gonna pull the kid that everybody's looking at. So, I think that probably resonated with Jeremiah, and then the loyalty. I mean, obviously Iona is a step up from Fairleigh Dickinson in terms of conference competition, and then just the type of player that you're able to recruit at a school like Iona, especially now with the reputation that it has. I think when Tobin got there and nothing wavered in terms of his loyalty to Jeremiah, and hey, I want you coming here, and I want you to, be a part of what we plan on building here. I think that spoke a lot to him. But for the most part, I know I just kind of went on a rant there, but for the most part, everybody kind of felt like, because especially with that team takeover team, there was a lot of smaller guards that weren't getting recruited at a level that a lot of people thought. But it's just because, they balance out each other so well. And those guys translate to the college level very well. As just look at the list of guys who have come out of that program. So everybody kind of thought he was under recruited, but obviously now I think where he's at Iona is a very good level for him.
Okay. So a good scouting report I read about him is that he's a throwback type of player, pure point guard, controls the pace of the game, high IQ, good handle, thriving in transition, nice mid-range game. Is all that accurate?
Yeah, no, I all that's accurate. I think he plays with great pace. That's mixed with really good burst, especially, if he's operating in ball screens. That's where he was so effective, especially this year. Because this year's team for Bishop McNamara, they're talented, man. Don't get me wrong, but they were very young, and he had to take more of a scoring sort of mindset with them. And it was evident by, I mean, average over 20 a game for him this year on good efficiency as well. But where he would make teams pay is if he can get in that ball screen and if that big hesitates to hedge for a second or decides to drop for some unforsaken reason, he's going to make them pay, and he can do it in a variety of ways. Has great, because he's extremely quick with the ball. Like I said, quick twitch guard that can really utilize any hand. He's not a guy who's going to thrive going left or thrive going right. He's pretty balanced. But if he's able to get an edge on a defender, I mean, it's more than likely curtains, just in terms of how he can get to the rim, make decisions, and do it with the quickness that he can. And then I know you touched on his ability in the open floor, and that's where his just overall speed comes to the forefront. Because he can his end-to-end speed is just impressive. He gets right to the heart of the defense. And like I said, when he's surrounded with guys who can score at an efficient high level, he knows how to create for those guys. But this year we really got to see him, whether it was in the ball screens, he was snaking them, getting to his spots in the mid-range and pulling up. And I think that's where that throwback point guard comes across. I mean, we see now with guys like, Dame Lillard or Steph Curry, when they're getting the high ball screens, are more than likely pulling from 25, 30 feet. Jeremiah is more the methodical point guard who's going to wear the defense down and just continue to attack the paint. And when he gets there, he can, finish with floaters, pull-ups, and again, like the thing that translates to college level so well is he can do it to either, going either way. So he's just an explosive player, an explosive playmaker, and still has room to grow. I would say as a jump shooter from three, but he's a guy that you need to, obviously you can't leave open, especially off the catch, from deep.
Okay. And again, you talked about, he comes from a winning program. He did a whole lot of winning in high school. He does seem like, again, plays with a high IQ. So he almost has a maturity level about him, and a character level about him. Do you have a good story about him or two, maybe, that shows what kind of character he is?
Yeah, I mean, so this year, the first time I got to see him was down at the St. James for the Martin Luther King Festival, um, and it was his first or second game back, I believe, because he had a hand injury, and his team was in a battle. I can't remember the team that they were playing against, but his team was in a battle, and it was just his ability to adjust as the game unfolded. So, he came in, he was kind of more reserved. He was really creating for other guys. But as I said, I mean, he played with a lot of like talented freshmen and sophomores. And at the end of the day, they're underclassmen. They're just not experienced. But, so they rode that momentum. And then once that, he noticed that well was kind of drying out and they just couldn't buy a bucket. He took it upon himself and then he started, scoring, being more aggressive and really pushing the pace. So I think he can just really dictate the course of a game. And then I was one of the four people who we created the Maryland private school state championship, because surprisingly, everybody thinks of DMV and Maryland and whatnot as a hotbed, but it was one of the only states who doesn't have a state championship that includes the private schools. So when Bishop McNamara played, he was just dictating the entire game. I think he went for 30 in the semifinal game. But really just again, what I would say is just to kind of, put a bow on it is like when his team needed him most to do whatever that game called for, he was there to answer the bell, and he does it in a way where he expects it. A lot of times these days, especially in the high school scene, a kid makes one good play and they want to get all the attention on them for wherever the cameras are, social media, all that stuff. Jeremiah just kind of goes about his business, and it's the next possession. And those are things that, like, people like myself, I really look for when I'm evaluating kids, because it has to be an expectation. It's not you made a good play, now let's have a party. It's let's pull our shorts up and let's get after it on defense, and that's exactly what he does.
Well, you mentioned earlier about the passion that Iona fans have, and we actually do like to get attached to our players. I mean, even though guys are only here for a year, our slogan is once a Gael, always a Gael. So here's a kid who's coming in as a freshman. We hope he's here for 4 years. Why will Iona fans love him?
Because Jeremiah is all about winning and what he can do to help a program win. And I know, that might sound like a cliche, but that's really, his MO. And I believe, who knows what, as we saw what Tobin did last year, who knows what he's going to be able to do this year. But what I will say is, if we're to say, look down the road of Tobin still being the Iona head coach, in 4 years, it would surprise me not one bit that Jeremiah is right there with him. And I think that's become a big concern for fan bases this year, especially at the mid-major level, and especially and particularly Iona's conference is, any player that has some success is ready to leave. Jeremiah is a loyal kid from all that I've heard, and as we've seen through this process, Tobin has been extremely loyal to him. So I think this is a guy who Iona fans can allow themselves to get attached to, and I think that's another reason why they'll love him.
Awesome. Well, Colby, thank you for coming on and educating us about Jeremiah. He sounds like, he was the first player to commit, like literally a couple of days after Tobin got the job, I feel like. And so we're excited to have him. And thank you again for telling us what we're in for with him. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you. Okay. Here on the podcast, we're going to welcome Corey Stitzel, head coach of the Virginia Premier AAU, where he certainly played a role in the development of both Dylan Saunders and Alex Bates. Coach, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Guy. I really Appreciate you having me on. And as we talked about off air there a little bit, I've now adopted Iona as my favorite college team. So I'm glad to have a chance to speak to some of the people that seem like they have such a great fan base.
Well, and that's actually interesting because, I don't know for sure. I mean, I don't follow exactly that closely to know if we've had any other kids from Virginia Premier in the last few years. But isn't it funny though? I mean, next time you have a kid who's really at that level, if these guys have a great experience, I mean, who knows what a pipeline could be created,
And that goes back to, my relationship a little bit with Tobin Anderson. I've known him for a while, but he took a Virginia Premier kid from me last year to go to St. Thomas Aquinas. A kid from the road down by where Dylan Saunders is from, about an hour south of Roanoke, Ethan Millirons, who had a really good freshman year for Stack. And he was his only offer at the time, St. Thomas, and Ethan got it done. So, I was comfortable with Tobin and very appreciative of Tobin that, the kid didn't have 10, 15 offers. Tobin's really good and his staff as evaluating him. They liked him. He went to St. Thomas. Of course, then Tobin went to FDU, but Ethan stayed at St. Thomas, had a really good freshman year. So, that's what recruiting is, Guy, a lot about relationships. And I certainly have that with the people at Iona.
Well, and tell us the story about that. So once Dylan committed to Iona, were you surprised that Alex decommitted from Fordham to come to Iona?
Alex was an interesting situation, committed to Fordham, really good player, heavily recruited. I think he ended up with 16 offers the first time around. He probably would have got 20 to 25, when he opened it up. I know he really did love Tobin in the recruiting process the first time, right? But I don't think FDU was the right school campus maybe for him. I think he really wanted to play for Tobin. Just that the FDU, for whatever reason, I didn't go on his visit with him. He just didn't feel like it was a fit for him, but Tobin was. So, when Tobin got Iona and, Fordham, the guy that recruited Alex at Fordham, Dave Paulson, took the Holy Cross job. That kind of got some wheels spinning there that, maybe he should open it up or look around because Dave was his guy. And, it didn't take long to figure out where, we all felt this should go. And to Alex's credit, he didn't mess around and he got this done pretty quickly. He announced it, Saturday, but that was really done for a couple of days. He was just waiting on a graphic. So there really he was heavily recruited when he opened it up. I probably had 50 phone calls, but I don't think there was much doubt on where he was going to go.
What would you say there was the connection that both Dylan and Alex saw with Tobin?
And the thing about Dylan and Alex's first connection with Tobin was that was before the historic run, right? This wasn't these guys having a connection with, as I say to Tobin, he's on TV more than anybody I've ever seen the last couple months. I mean, if they go by, airtime of a face, he probably leads the nation on network. So his connection was, I think he does a really good job of getting kids excited to play for them. I think he also does a really good job of being genuine and caring and about their development, not only as basketball players, but as people. And I think he is really good in player development. I coach in college for 20 years. I've done some scouting in the NBA, still do a little bit. And, if you say the word Tobin Anderson about somebody from New York to New Jersey to California to Alaska, he's a player development guy. And I think both those guys are basketball junkies and realize that probably is a place, our coach that could get the most out of them. It's funny, 6 months later, after they both committed in the fall, here they are going to play for him just at a different place.
All right. So let's do a quick scout for Dylan. I see him described as having a versatile game, kind of a stretch 4-5, deep range, good hands, plays inside out. I also know Tobin saw him last summer and said he was the best shooter he saw all summer. Accurate report?
Yeah. I mean, he's an elite shooter at 6'8". He can really shoot the basketball. He's a pick and pop guy. I think eventually, with the development of, being in a college program and they'll be in summer school here in a month and they get 8 weeks in the summer, Dylan does to get stronger. I think eventually he'll be able to score a little bit in the post. He won't just be a one-trick pony. He is an elite shooter, and he's a terrific passer out of the high post. He sees the floor. We've had AAU games. Sometimes AAU defense is good, sometimes it's not. Doesn't matter. The ball's still got to go in. He had a couple of AAU games where he's made 10. He had one AAU game where he made 9.5 in the first half against a really good team at Idaho. Really can shoot the ball. Good defender. He needs to get stronger. As most, freshmen. He just turned 18 yesterday, so he's a young senior. He's not one of these two-time reclass guys. Block shots, but his impact right away for Iona, whenever that is going to be his ability to shoot the ball from deep. It is elite. He's got a high major skill, and that's shooting the ball. That's what separates him from a lot of other guys.
Actually, let me ask you this. This is a good question. Do you think this is a great situation to come into? Here's a roster that basically needs 12 new players at the moment anyway. And so, I had Tobin on the podcast and he basically said, yeah, we're going to try to balance it out. We're not going to go out and get, 12 seniors or anything like that. So he went out and he got a freshman class. Now I know he's looking at sophomores and he really wants to have the balance for each class. So knowing that, how do you think Dylan will respond in terms of knowing he's not going to be expected to come right in and like, hey, we're not going to throw you into the wolves as a starter, as a freshman. You're going to have time to develop against some veteran guys. How do you think he'll respond to that?
I think that's what, I don't want to say that's what he's looking for because every kid, wants to play, but I think Dylan is committed to the process. And I think Dylan knows, that there's a process for him to continue to get better, to be able to be an impactful player in the MAC and at a great place like Iona. There's things that he needs to do to get better, to be able to play. But as we evaluated to your question before and your comment before is, I think he believes in Tobin will get him there until he gets stronger, until he, adjusts to the speed and athleticism of the college game. He has a skill that can get him on the floor. Now, whether that's 25 minutes or 5 minutes or 8 minutes, that'll be up to Dylan's development. But he does have a skill that Dylan knows, and I think everybody knows that he could, play right now. Dylan's one of those guys who can crawl out of bed and you throw him in the gym and he'll go make 8 threes. So he does have the ability to impact as a freshman with his shooting. But I think we all know, and Dylan knows, that there's also a process for him to continue to get better, to be what he needs to be. And, he's committed to that process. He's a great kid. He's a great student. He's a hard worker. And he knows the drill. I think that's what we do a really good job of my program with my college experience is, every kid thinks they're going to go to places and play. And, you just mentioned the roster at Iona. I look at it the other way with the kids, how they have to continue to develop no matter how many players Tobin needs, because, look at the Final Four, how many really freshmen, and Tobin had Florida Atlantic on the ropes, in the second round or the NCAA tournament. There's not many freshmen out there. So there's a process for these young guys to be able to play, but also develop to be really good.
Yeah. All right. And now switching over to Alex, just from what I've seen, he looks like he's got a really complete game and skill set, which would obviously explain the higher level offers that he got. Yep. Tell us about more what he can do out there.
He's an elite shooter as well, and every bit of 6'5" wing. What separates Alex a little bit from some other wings is he's a really good athlete. He will drive baseline and try to put you through the rim with him. I think, if you look at him, he's kind of a nerdy looking kid, but when he goes out on the court, he plays like a man child, and elite range, can get to the rim, finish above the rim, has great length for Tobin's press. A developing defender will get better when he gets coached hard at the college level. Improving mid-range game, the ability to rise above guys with his elite athleticism. I think a really good get for Iona. Obviously, he's a Fordham commit, an A-10 commit, and then Fordham went 28-5 or whatever. Mm-hmm. It wasn't your grandfather's Fordham this year. So he was committed to a Fordham program that had one of the best years, if not their best year in like 30 years. So he's got a real chance. Again, young kid, going to take time to develop to the speed and physicality of the college game. But once he does, that's going to be a really good player there at Iona for a long time.
So Iona brought in 4 freshmen, and we just talked about 2 of them. Anybody who's followed college basketball for a while knows kind of how recruiting works. There's going to be hits and misses, and you have 4 freshmen. In my experience, there's always that one that just kind of he's going to crack that lineup. You can just see it. He's going to play a lot. I feel like Alex is that one. Do you think he is kind of more D1 ready than maybe a typical freshman would be?
I think he is. He's got another elite skill as a shooter, but he's a MAC or plus athlete off the ground. I mean, he's got the athleticism to go with his ability to shoot the ball. He's got a real chance. Again, I think those 8 weeks in the summer and the 6 weeks in the fall, how quickly he picks up some things will determine that. But I would agree with you 100%. And I know the other 2 freshmen as well that Tobin's bringing in, and they're really good players. One kid's from Bishop McNamara, whose high school coach is a friend of mine, who's an hour from where I live. I think those guys are really good players. I think all 4 of the high school guys he brought in are really good players. I think they're all going to have probably an impact at some point. But I would agree with you that Alex has a real chance.
Okay. So obviously Dylan and Alex have a connection. They've known each other. Can you give us a little more idea about their history? And as I'm going to guess, they've been friends probably for quite a while since they decided to go to college together. So how long have they been playing together? I'm going to assume they have that kind of chemistry on the court as well, where they have a knack for knowing where the other one is on the floor, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Dylan, Alex has played in my program for 3 years. Dylan was really 3 years. Dylan missed 2 summers ago with a knee injury. He didn't play that one summer where Alex was really starting to develop. Dylan's a real quiet kid, a very matter-of-fact kid. Alex has got a little bit more of a big personality. But you can tell from the beginning, I have a college and pro background, that you're going to run stuff and do things for your best players and take advantage of matchups. It didn't take long to figure out. We had a really good team. I mean, we had 5 or 6 other guys that are playing college basketball. One might go Division I. The other ones are Division II kids. They're really high-level D3 kids. So I think it was kind of always their team when we started last year. And Alex would always look for Dylan, and Dylan would always kick it out to Alex when he was surrounded in the post, or, if we run a little pin down or step back, it was always those 2 involved. I wouldn't say that they were, wanted a package deal, or that was something that was mandatory or something to them. I think they always thought of it. I think they were both treated as separate, even by the schools that recruited them. But at the end of the day, I think as time went on and this Iona opportunity came to fruition and was a possibility, I think they both got really excited about that, and have a comfort zone and friends. They're both great students. They're both going to be great people in society when this 4 or 5 years is over. Great families. And look, when you get a chance to go to college and play with a guy who's not your position that you're competing with, which they're not, with a buddy that you're familiar with, somebody in the dorm you're familiar with, somebody to figure out New York City with, I mean, that only helps you, not only as a player, as a person, with being comfortable. And when they step on campus, they're going to have a comfort zone, and that goes a long way. And I couldn't be more happy for them to have them both there. And like I said, they weren't treated as a package deal. So they made these decisions, and coaches made these decisions, and Tobin made these decisions, treating them separate. But ultimately he got both.
Yes. Why will Iona fans love these guys?
Because they're hard blue collar kids that play really hard, that play, Alex is a little bit more of an emotional player. Dylan's kind of matter of fact, but he'll have a streak in him. They make a lot of shots. They play really hard. They're maximum effort guys. They can relate to the world we live in. I think that they will adapt the crowd and the fans, which, I coached at Marist, so I'm familiar with the tradition and stuff at Iona, and I played at Iona. Willard was the coach when I was at Marist. These guys are, New York City New Rochelle, tough kids that are going to go out there and give it their all. And they're winners. And look, I followed Iona, obviously not as close as some of the people listening to yourself. And I've seen since the last week of these guys committing, the rabid fan base. And this is going to be two kids that the fan base is really going to attach themselves to whenever their time comes and make them one of their own.
Love it. Well, Coach, I really appreciate you coming on and educating us on both of these guys. I mean, you, like you said, it's a rabid fan base. We're itching when, you get a little scared. You see that roster with only one player on it from last year's team.
Right.
And you know that Tobin and the staff has a lot of work to do. But, when you went out and they grabbed freshmen first, and I actually understand why they did that. The way the portal's kind of taking over everybody's minds. A lot of these high school kids are getting overlooked, I think. So I feel like that was kind of intentional by Tobin. And these two guys look like they're going to be perfect fits for his system. So can't wait to see them in action. And I appreciate you coming on and teaching us about them.
I appreciate having me on. And, the one thing I would say is you said Tobin and his staff and Tom Bannicum, who Tobin brought with him from FDU, did a really good job. He was Dylan's lead guy at FDU, and he did a really good job when Alex decommitted of recruiting both those guys. That's a guy that's going to be a head coach here soon, somewhere at some level. And I want to make sure I gave him some credit because I was an assistant once. And they do a lot of the dirty and grunt work. And Tom did a really good job. And he's probably a rising star in this business and somebody that is going to move up real quickly.
Well, I'm sure he appreciates that if he listens to this. I hope he does. So again, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll catch up again down the line.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thanks again to coaches Colby Giacubeno and Corey Stitzel for dropping our podcast to drop some knowledge on our recruits. Just getting warmed up, fans. Stay tuned for more updates on our new roster to be. Go Gaels.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the IonaHoops.com podcast. This podcast is a production of IonaHoops.com and its publisher Guy Filatico. The opinions shared during this podcast are those of Guy Filatico, IonaHoops.com, and any featured guests. This podcast is not affiliated with Iona University Athletics or the university itself. Thank you for supporting IonaHoops.com.